Welcome in, fans, to another episode of the Two Line Pass podcast. I'm your host, Randon. Here with me, as always, is Dustin, and we bring you another episode of the Fanley Cup Series, where we get to know you, the fans. You've gotten to know us over the course of the season, and now we get to hear directly from you. We have a fantastic guest with us tonight, a man with a wealth of hockey knowledge and a fan that the Utah Hockey Club is lucky to have. Please help me welcome the Utah Hockey Guy. Welcome to the show, my man.
Hey guys, how's it going, man? I don't know about any of that. You're the hype. I appreciate the hype, but I'll try not to let you guys down after that. That's very kind of you.
Every single one of our guests has just been extremely humble. We lay out like a red carpet of just this introduction, and everybody's been like, "Oh, I don't know if I deserve all that." So, if anything, we are a very humble fan base.
Okay, well, and I apologize. You probably hear some barking in the background. I've got some golden retrievers who we took for a walk, but probably are still not quite down and out. So,
well.
Hey, but before we start, though, I got to ask you guys, because your name of your podcast is the Two Line Pass, right? So many new hockey followers wouldn't understand that. But so I take it you guys go back in terms of being a hockey lover pre-2005?
Yes. So hockey runs deep in our veins, especially so me and our other host, if you've seen him, Ryan, who's not active on X formerly known as Twitter, but so he and I are brothers, and we actually created the name the Two Line Pass years and years and years ago when we had dreams of doing something like this. Well, of course, we got scared and chickened out, and then when we brought Dustin in, we were like, let's bring it. But even though the Two Line Pass is no longer a thing, we feel like it's hockey related enough, so we'll see. And if we need to rebrand in 2 years because nobody gets it, we'll go from there.
No, I love it. Like I said, most people probably who are new hockey followers wouldn't understand, but yeah, they killed that to open up the game. So yeah, I just wanted to ask and kind of understand where you guys picked up that name.
Well, that is a great question. And I usually open these interviews with asking you to introduce yourself. But first, you mentioned the Golden Retrievers. So now I got to know more about them. Tell us about your dogs, my man.
Yeah, so I've had these two from the same breed for about 3 years now. I've had dogs for a long time. I've had, a St. Bernard who I had for about 8 years. Their life expectancy isn't too long. That was my first dog and fell in love with it. It was kind of my sidekick, not to get too deep, but, died of cancer, took it to Colorado to go through some cancer treatment, didn't work out, and then picked up a couple of rescues along the way in between. And just, I love dogs, and, they're man's best friends. So these two are a handful. Prior to all of that, I only had like one dog at a time. And this is our first time having a couple of dogs. So it's been a handful, but I love them.
Well, if they make an appearance on the episode, they are more than welcome. And sorry to hear about the St. Bernard, but that's awesome. Well, maybe the Utah Hockey Club will have a pooch on the pond like the Utah Grizzlies have, but maybe that's a push too far with how big the arena is. But now that we've got the dog introductions out of the way, you're well known on the Utah Hockey Club social media scene. We've got a lot of the same people that we talk to, a lot of the same followers, but there's a few listeners out there who may not be familiar with you. So why don't you go ahead and give us a brief introduction? Tell us about yourself.
Yeah, sure. So I'm a 40-year plus hockey fan. Grew up in Montreal, was, brought up on the game in Montreal. My stepdad made it sort of an ingrained thing for us to do every Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday night. And after about 8+ years, I decided to come live with my father here in Utah. This was his last tour of duty. And it was a bit of a culture shock in more ways than one, but primarily because, hockey was really thin here. We had the Golden Eagles, and so we'd try to go, as much as we could to get my hockey fix, and sort of got my brothers and my dad to love the game and introduce them to the game. And, the Golden Eagles, man, they were something else. Going from the NHL to the IHL at that time was a pretty drastic change, but they were so fun to watch. So yeah, and then 3-4 years later, we got the Colorado Avalanche as sort of a regional team, and when Patrick Waugh, who anybody who knows Patrick, is a legend, being Montreal's goaltender, getting shipped to Colorado, that I became a Duel fan. And so, yeah, that's how I kind of got started. When I played hockey growing up in Montreal. We have a huge family there. My mom has like 4 sisters and 3 brothers. My stepdad had pretty much the same. So the entire town, was just nothing but cousins. So, we'd literally play park hockey. The city would come out, drop hockey rinks at the baseball park. So you had an avenue to, get ice time. But my cousins sort of introduced me to the sport, got me to learn it. We'd hang out, play the old Nintendo ice hockey game. If you guys remember that, you could adjust your players to the fat guys, skinny guys to build your team. Yeah, I mean, it was just sort of a thing back in Montreal. That's all you did is you ate, drank, and watched hockey all the time. So, yeah, that's how I got my fix. So. It's probably a pretty quick rundown, but I think that's probably the highlight.
So growing up, I would assume as a fan of Club de Hockey Canadien, and then being a fan of the Colorado Avalanche, how was it hard to like switch your allegiance once we got the Utah Hockey Club, or did you just kind of like fall right in line, like these are our guys now, and this is my team?
Yeah, man, that is an interesting twist. So, it was easy being a Habs and an Avs fan, being East Coast, West Coast, and, there was no conflict there. But, I'll be honest, when I first started up the whole account with just trying to get people excited about, the possibility of a franchise, I thought this would just be, my third team, kind of the third wheel. And then I was like, you really going to go to invest all this time and energy to be a season ticket holder and, make this a second or third team behind the Habs. And so it's really kind of taken over as, the team that I'm most passionate about, which is really interesting because Montreal has, built up a great youth roster, which should be really exciting for years to come. And the Avs, have been one of those teams that are always cup contenders. But yeah, it was really, and I think I posted this about a couple weeks ago, but once the playoffs started, it was sort of like you're going from this roller coaster high of going to games every night and, turning into games. And then it's like, okay, now the playoffs are here, but we're not in it. So, yeah, it was a little bit of a twist. I'm still a Habs fan. I've probably distanced myself from being an Avs fan. I'm obviously watching the series and I'm pulling for them. But yeah, I'm all in on the Utah Hockey Club. So I'm excited about it. Of course, we got a good young roster and, there are only great things to come. But I am surprised looking back at the allegiance of making that full shift and going, wow, this 40 years being a Habs fan, 30 years being an Avs fan. But like I said, man, you finally get a hockey team in our market. You just got to get behind them. And I will never take this moment for granted because it's been, 30 years since moving to Utah or a little over that, possibly, of wanting this. Yeah. Not looking back.
I'm very glad that you did end up moving fully over, though, because I think there is still some lingering fans who, on any other day, they'll be the Utah Hockey Club fan, but then when their team plays Utah Hockey Club, they won't drop their allegiance. My sister being one of them. If you're listening, Amber, shame on you. Or sister who will not be named, shame on you. But
yeah.
But we're glad that you've switched over now. Obviously, Montreal and the perception, of course, is that every Canadian is born with a hockey stick in their hand, and that's just second nature to the Canadians. But you talked about the Golden Eagles. So hockey itself obviously is not a foreign concept to Utah, but never quite this level. Obviously not the level of the NHL. But how have you seen this market kind of? It's not really comparable, but what are your thoughts on how the market itself is growing?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, and I do think it would be a little unfair to kind of compare the two because there's just such a rich tradition and history. I mean, you got hockey on 24/7 between TV, radio, it's nonstop, newspaper, front page, all of that stuff. But when I first came to Utah and we started going to those Eagles games, there was definitely a hardcore base. It was sort of like the Fight Club, if you will. Like no one talked about it, but everybody knew that, between the Salt Palace and then the Delta Center, that like this was something fun to go to, and just you'd see the passion. So I already felt like there was a pretty solid core. Now obviously years had gone by, but For me, I always remember the 97 AHL championship game where the Delta Center drew 17,000. I mean, I was not. So to me, I thought hockey could work. Shortly after there, I was like, dude, we should have a team. But I wasn't a Jazz. I mean, I was a bandwagon Jazz guy. There was that great run between the Jazz going to back-to-back championships, and then you had the Utes running, and it was pretty electric at that time because, the Grizzlies were in that in terms of that run. And I thought, dude, this is just a sports market. Like Utah, I know it's like kind of funny to say now, people overuse it, but like, Utah shows up. I didn't have any doubt that this could be a solid hockey market. And, I played here in Utah. I still did drop-ins for a while. Unfortunately, my knee and hip are pretty banged up and can't play as much as I'd like to. But there was this like following. And, I know some folks in the officiating world. And, it's just you kind of knew, like, you have a solid core here. The new fans will get behind once they have an opportunity to take the game in. So there was never any doubt. In terms of just seeing how it's grown, I mean, it's been tremendous. When I first created this X account, I always like to say Twitter, but, there wasn't a lot of chatter, a year plus ago, 2 years ago, I guess now, around it. And because everyone was like, well, it'd be great if we got one, but it didn't seem realistic. And, anybody who remembers Ryan Smith being on 32 Thoughts a couple years ago, man, when he dropped that little nugget and his aspirations of like, hey, maybe in a few years, like the volume for me turned up, and it was great. So just to watch the community be engaged, with where we are from the summer of 2024 to where we are today, where people are on social media, like begging for content and going like, I need my hockey fix. I mean, it's just awesome. Sorry. That was probably a very long-winded, probably didn't hit the mark in terms of what your question was originally about, but it's been fantastic. I think this is what I've been waiting to see, is just that, people loving the game and wanting to engage and continue to build a hockey community.
Absolutely is. It's right on the mark. It was right on the money. And this is your forum. You take as much or as little time on each question as you want. But that was a perfect. And we like talking to people who, especially if you have outside of Utah experience, just talking, it all ties in one way or another with how you view, how you watch, how you experience this season. So we absolutely love to hear it.
Yeah. Yeah, and listen, there are hockey markets, I tend to go on the road here and there. There's the ebbs and flows, man. Like, and I think, especially when you're in a major four market, like if you're not winning, you go on the back burner. But like I'm an Eagles fan, Philadelphia Eagles fan. So people probably, people are probably hating me already for that. But, I've been there, and when the Flyers are like, in full force, they're in there, they're competing, they're a hot team, it's night and day. Like, it becomes you need that market, like Buffalo too. Buffalo being pretty regional to, that's really, besides the Bills, that's all they ever have. But like some of these major fours, like my point is like, if you go to Philadelphia and the Flyers aren't doing well, you're not hearing them on either of their two major sports radio stations. And I listen to a lot of Eagles content during, the summer and fall months. So, what's great about Utah, and we got to see how it sustains. And I believe that, hey, the Jazz have had so many bad years the last stretch, and they're still selling out, and they're still on the radio talk. You want to see that being sustained over longevity. I've been to other markets where it's like I don't even feel the energy about the hockey market or the team that I'm, watching when I go to some out of market games. It's just like, I don't hear anything. But luckily, I think a lot of the media, KSL and the other guys, they do a great job, and our beat writers do a really great job at trying to promote the game and giving us content. So I feel like right now, we're not in the bottom of that learning curve. Like, sure, there's new fans and stuff, but I feel like from a hypeness, if you will, or the feeling of being a hockey market, we're in that middle of the pack. Like, maybe it's because it's the excitement of the new team. I don't know. I feel like, it's been great.
You mentioned the excitement of a new team and how some areas will will struggle getting fan support and media coverage if the team's not performing so well. I think for at least for a little while, like, the Utah market's going to ride like a bit of a high. I don't think it's going to really matter if Utah is winning or losing. We're still going to be riding that high of like, hey, at least we have a team. How long do you think this market can sustain? Like, if, let's say, Utah happens to take a step back next year, I think all three of us would agree that next year's like playoffs or bust. But if for some reason Utah takes a step back, how long do you think this wave of like, hey, we have a team, can sustain like fan and media support?
That's interesting, because firm believer that I think, as you just pointed out, I think the three of us all believe, like, the trajectory of this team and where we're heading, we are going to make the playoffs next year. There's a lot to be excited about. So, you're going to have your fair weather fans who are going to probably hop off. I don't think, for what I've seen at the Delta Center, there's a different, I think even Ryan's wife said this, like at the press conference last year when they got the franchise, like there's a different set of audience or different like ticket subscription when people were going after season tickets. They weren't all Jazz fans. In fact, there was a whole new fan base. So and there's a lot of folks like myself and probably some of you who are listening, and we've come from, we're sort of the displaced hockey people. So I don't see anybody jumping off anytime soon. Even if we take a step back next year, the true fans are going to still be there. Man, I'm all in. As I said at the beginning, I'm excited about, being a season ticket holder, until I die. So as far as sustainability, I just think this is a great market. There's going to be ebbs and flows to this. I think people who are starting to familiarize themselves with the game, we got a great GM. We couldn't have asked for a better owner. Like, we have so many things working in our favor. And that I don't see it falling off, in any short term. And even if it were, like I said, I just think this is a sports market that's been underrated for quite some time. And people, will they tolerate kind of what the Jazz have gone through? I think you got to still build that up a little bit, because you're going to have your core, but then you'll probably lose some people. But I don't even want to really speculate about any of that, because, man, we got a lot of promising things ahead of us. So none of this if something were to go backwards, because I really don't see it happening. And if it does, I don't see it being as drastic as some of the larger markets that when they struggle, like it's pretty embarrassing to see, some of the arena, emptiness, if you will, for some of those larger markets when those teams aren't doing well. So I don't see that here in Utah, because again, we have this other segment of sports fans who are like, this is what I've been waiting for. Like, we're not going to lose that passion, anywhere in the near future.
Now, as we dip our toes into actually talking about the team, and as a season ticket holder, you can't ask a parent to pick a favorite child, but I can ask a fan to pick their favorite player. So who's your favorite player on the roster and why?
Yeah, I'm a goalie guy. That's the position I played. I love Patrick. Even when Patrick retired, I've always, been a goalie guy. So, I don't think it comes without surprise here if I say Vejmelka. I just thought he really put this team on his back for long stretches to allow Bear and the team, work out the bumps that they were running into, which, I mean, to be completely fair, they were decimated on defense. And, for anybody who's like, well, they probably should have solved that. Look, when you're bringing in new guys, or you're trying to mix up your D pair to see what works. I mean, they brought in Sergachev, they brought in Mata, they brought in Marino, who is hurt. Like they when you move Cole up to the second line, playing second line minutes, and you're going to struggle. Don't get me wrong, Cole's really solid, but it just takes time. And I just thought Vejmelka played out of his mind, and so he's my guy.
I thought it was going to be Schmaltz. We've bonded over many defending Schmaltz posts, so
Yeah.
I was really pulling for Schmaltz, but that's okay.
Yeah.
That's okay.
Hey, man, I've got some University of North Dakota guys who follow me, and they're obviously completely biased about it, but they hate towards Schmaltz. I just don't get, like, the guy's a 20 goal scorer. The guy just because I don't even want to divide a segment or anything like that of different people. But yeah, I thought Schmaltz lived up to, what he produces. And I quite literally don't understand why people, give him a hard time.
I think he was an easy target in Arizona because he didn't want to criticize Keller, who you obviously, is the kind of the build around piece of this entire team in the franchise in Arizona. So I blame the Arizona media market, but
really?
we may never know. But I think I've seen some of their podcasts, and he was always dangled as trade bait. Like Schmaltz was just the expendable, also ran kind of guy, and I think it was just he was an easy guy to pinpoint. And I think we all agree, like there are sometimes like his mistakes you can see. Other people's mistakes, like it's not as obvious, but when like Schmaltz fans on a shot, you're like, Schmaltz, like it's just that he's just that type of player, because I feel like he's everywhere doing so many things that it's bound to happen, but what can we do? But I do want to talk, so as talking about the team, but let's talk about the organization too. So you are a season ticket holder, so you have had the chance to experience from the very beginning to the very end and kind of watch the evolution. Now I'm talking like on ice production, I'm talking about the intermission music, like everything that goes into producing a hockey game, and you've been able to watch the transition, which I thought, being at the very first game and the very last game, like it was just like they learned so much and acquired so much knowledge and just kept improving. And what are some of the things, as a season ticket holder, what are the things you love about being at the game that the organization does, and what are some things that you would like to see them try to do in the future?
Yeah, probably, and disappoint you guys here. I don't get caught up in all of that, all of the off ice like production stuff. But I do agree there was an evolution from the beginning of the year through the end of the year. Like the music selection, for one, to start us off, was they're there now. They get it. Rock, metal, trying to fire up the fans, not the techno music that they were going, or the troll music that they were using for goals against. I shouldn't say troll, but just the giving the away team sort of a goal song, if you will. But I mean, I've waited for 30 years for something like this, so I knew it was going to be a learning curve. So I wasn't overly critical about some of the production that they were doing. Like I feel like their intros have gotten better, and I like the teaser of, that they're doing, that I think they're laying out for what could possibly be the team name. But, the music was probably obviously the one that was the most annoying at the beginning, but I think they've overcome that. But all the other stuff, I don't really, I don't really pay that close attention to it. I'm just kind of focused in on the ice. But, there are things about the Delta Center I'd like to see done, that if, like for one, I don't know if you guys experienced this when you guys have attended games, but the biggest complaint I guess I still have is when fans are being let in during game action. Like that's going to happen. I think they've gotten better with that over time too, but just the amount of people who still will get confused of like, is this section 130 or is this section 131? And, they need to get some like painting down on the floor at the stairs to kind of direct people like, hey, this is 130, you go here, 131, you go there. Yeah, it's on the wall, but the misleading thing about that is you're entering the entrance to the arena. I guess it's not the entrance, but you know what I mean. There's, they throw it up right there on one side, and it's like, wait, people are going to get confused. So I don't know if that's what you're kind of looking for. That all the other stuff. Hey, man, I just want to be entertained and watch hockey. So. Yeah.
Okay, so as a season ticket holder, this question may not go anywhere because it might not apply. How nice are your seats? Do you have access to the Toyota Club?
No, and I probably made a bit of a mistake early on because first of all, I was late in queue, so any chance of trying to get a couple seats in the Toyota Club when my time came was probably unlikely. But even then, I was surprised. They did have seats, but they kind of did, and as everybody's probably talked about, they had this like split package where they could get you down there, but you were also going to have to, take seats in the upper bowl. I think at the end of the day, I was like, you know what? I know these seats are going to be ideal until I know what the Delta Center is going to look like over, the next 3 years, like what the plans were. I did obviously want to get down to the lower bowl, and I'm thankful now that next year I will be. But I was pretty hesitant to want to make that commitment down there because I still think there's some challenges with it, and especially the folks coming from the Toyota Club out to the arena. But I thought about it, and I could have worked out a package to get one. There are times where I'm like, it would have been cost effective because I do enjoy a good beverage, and so I think had I gone that way, it would have probably been cost effective based on the amount of things that you get from they're not appetizers, between beer and food and stuff like that. So. I held off just because I really wasn't quite sold on the idea of, the configuration. So my seats were good. I had no complaints about them. I was in section 131, further back, and I did that purposely again because I thought that gave me the greatest view of the entire ice. And I was kind of on the blue line, attacked twice. Really lucked out because some of the guys that I was surrounded with were some old referees that reffed when I was playing, and so we got to reminisce. And these guys were like, talk about the Golden Eagles. Like they went to either the first game or they were like the first high school hockey team. It was pretty fun. I was not a Toyota Club guy, but I did get to experience it, and I do think, it would have been advantageous to have probably signed up, given how much, I probably ran up. But I'm now going to be behind the glass, several rows back from the attack twice, which is where I always prefer to be, to see the game action and kind of see, like, just love watching the goaltender, whether he's playing whether the attack is happening or not, just like watching them, in the, so.
I didn't even realize that the Toyota bar or the Toyota Club was open bar. Like the one time I got to experience it, like I've got my card out and I'm ready to pay for it. And now it totally makes sense how they have so many people on the chug cam, because I'm like, I paid $18 for this beer. I'm not chugging it. Are you kidding me? I'm gonna just sit and enjoy it. But if they could just go back to the Toyota Club and get a new one, like it totally made sense after I had experienced it. But yeah, it's that celly cam was quite something till it got taken away. It was one of the things I did not truly expect to see. I knew hockey fans love to drink, but I was not expecting that type of, like, the fans went nuts for it. They loved that celly cam. They absolutely loved it. And remember with the opening game with the two little people drinking out of the boots, like, it was wild. It was the Wild West out there.
Yeah, and the prosthetic leg. I think the gal that was towards the end was there on that first game. I remember she did the chug. If it wasn't the first game, it was like the second game at the Delta Center. But and you know what? I will say, while they were trying to figure out the entertainment value in between periods or intermissions, I give them a lot of props to sticking to what worked, because I still think it works. Like, people love, guys or women chugging beer and having fun, and, obviously I think it was like after the first game, we had set the record for between the Jazz and the Utah Hockey Club on the most amount of beer sold in one game. It's a different group, but yeah, I liked that party feeling to it, and I thought they did a really good job while they were trying to figure out to say, let's just keep riding this wave, because it never failed. People were absolutely enjoying it, to the point where, what was really great was when you had kids like drinking Pepsi or soda or water, and they were chugging, and you were just like, this is just hilarious stuff. But yeah, that was probably the one thing that they did really well throughout the season was, letting the fans be part of the show, if you will.
Absolutely know what you mean, and it was always fun. It was always I took advantage many a time of the $10 seats from Smith's, which I thought was a phenomenal move. Couldn't have done it better. Offering those discounted seats, even the seats that they weren't even being sold, not really, after the first game.
Right.
For the first few weeks, they weren't even selling them, and then they put them on the discount promotion, which it was incredible. So you had a packed house. You got to, people take the hit of, oh well, it's an obstructed view. Well, it doesn't matter because I got in for $10. Like, it was just incredible. Do you want to put on our GM hats for this next question, or do we want to stay away from GM questions?
No. I'm not. Everyone's got opinions, so no, I'm not shy in sharing mine. Some people hate them, but it is what it is.
Let's do it. Put on your GM hat. Everybody knows that I've been chasing the Mitch Marner dream, and there's other people who want to, chase Sam Bennett from Florida. Have you given any thought? Are there any free agents out there that you want to target, or is there any spicy trade? You think any player that maybe I'm thinking maybe like we dangle out there for Jack Eichel, who's next year going to be on his last year in Vegas. So any free agents you got your eye on, or spicy trades you want to project?
Yeah. So I don't think you're alone on the Mitch Marner train. I think, last year somebody had posed the question like, hey, would you trade Clayton Keller for Mitch Marner? I respected the question based on contracts. No. I mean, now it's ridiculous because there's going to be, a raise in the salary and stuff. But, at that time, I was like, if you can get a Mitch Marner, you got to pull the trigger if you can get a Mitch Marner. And the amount of hate is just ridiculous. Like, people go back to, he threw his gloves on the bench because his two teammates were giving him a hard time. Well, you know what? They haven't produced in any capacity, in big clutch games either. So I think immediately if you bring a Mitch Marner in and you set him up, and I've said this, if you give him with Gunther, like that'll be just phenomenal. You keep Logan Cooley and Clayton Keller together. So I mean, I'm on the Mitch Marner train. Beyond that, I do feel like we need kind of a bit of a power forward. I think sometimes people get power forwards mixed up with like forecheckers, which are a little different. I'm talking about a guy who, will go to the net and battle and, like the Kachuk brothers, a Kadri. I'd love to get a guy like Kadri on the team who has a little bit of a bite to him, who is going to do that dirty work and get in front of the net and drive opponents crazy. I loved him when he was with Colorado, but beyond that, Sam Bennett, I guess, I do think he has a little bit probably more fight to him than Hayton, but I love Hayton. So I think if you bring him on, I mean, is it sixes? Are they kind of equal? I thought Barrett Hayton had a great year, but you can never, run out of that center depth. So, I don't think you're going to bring a Sam Bennett in to be a second line center. I don't think he's going to be, I think Cooley is the guy who's that future number one center. So, probably, that's probably the three guys that I would like to see if there's a trade out there. Obviously next year, McDavid, if things continue to, they continue to waste his years here, he's also one that could become available. I think ultimately they'll get it done, but that's just fantasy here. He's a guy who, if they don't get a goaltender and address that issue, he might want a change of scenery, but I don't know. I think at the end of the day, I think the Leafs are going to lock up Mitch Marner, although I was ecstatic. I haven't been able to watch much games because I have a lot of projects going on right now, but, it's always a good day when the Leafs lose. And I think that only helps to make the Mitch Marner possibility. I think it's a small percentage. I think they'll get it done, but, it's always a good day when the Leafs and Bruins lose. So I don't know. What about you guys? What are your guys' take? What's your GM hat?
Yeah, I'm
towards?
all on the Marner train, and I want to pair up Gunther and Schmaltz is what I want to pair. I want Marner to take the right wing spot on top line one, and I want to move Schmaltz down and see if Schmaltz can take his early season playmaking ability and get Gunther 5-on-5 production. So I think for as much as I love Dylan Gunther and as much as he has been so important to Utah Hockey Club's offensive identity, he was I believe the term is a power play merchant. I think he was the third highest in terms of point percentage on the power play. So
right.
I would love to see him get more
5-on-5.
Yeah. And now if they don't care and they're just going to keep rolling with the Gunther Keller Cooley line, like I'm fine with that. I don't know. I guess you put Marner on the second line. I don't know if now I can't think. Barrett Hayton is necessarily the type of center that maybe he will benefit. I mean, Hayton was good, but I don't think he's like, if you could ideally have a top 6 center, he's probably not on the top of the list, but not to say that he's bad. But I really would like, if we miss on let's say we miss on Marner, right? We don't really go after everybody. We're anticipating giving Cooley, probably north of $9 million, unless he can Bill Armstrong can pull another rabbit out of his hat with like the Gunther move. I expect to give Cooley quite a bit of money, but I would really like to see Vegas suck, lose to Minnesota, Jack Eichel gets pissed, and then we scoop up Jack Eichel for the last 4 or 5 years of his prime. So I would love that. Now, I would at that point, Jack Eichel would be the number 1 center, and then I would move back and do a Gunther Cooley pairing on line 2, and then Hayton obviously would move down. But that would give time for like your Tisha Ginlas, Cole Baudouins to see if they are going to be the next guy, especially Tiege, but with his injury, I'm not sure what his development sequencing is. So I want us to swing for the fences with Marner. Otherwise, I want to see us make a play for Jack Eichel, see what Vegas might be willing to part with him, if they will be. But they're due for a rebuild, right? They've been at the top of the game for too long. It's time to fire sale in Vegas. That's what I say.
Yeah, I see where you're going with it. On the whole Schmaltz dropping down, I can see that. I think the whole Gunther, Keller, Cooley line, I think that was kind of built out of necessity with the slump they were going into. Because when I think towards the end, when they were in that 20-game stretch, it was kind of like it's do or die. So they kind of threw up their top line there at moments to try to gain some offensive spark. But I don't think Schmaltz will be your number one. He'll be on that number 1 line, But yeah, it is fascinating to see what will happen. To me, the whole thing is, I think Sam Bennett's statistics. It's been a while since I looked at it, but it seemed like both of them had a pretty comparable season between he and Hayton. But I agree. I do think Sam probably has a little bit more bite to Well, that's the whole makeup of the Florida Panthers, is the way that they play. So I think we could use some of that. But anyway, yeah, I mean, what about you, Dustin? What's your GM hat telling you, or what would you do?
I like all that, but what we've talked about is we want the Lightning to lose in the first round and just like, even though they've been like the one constant in the NHL for the last decade, but just blow it up, and then we take John Cooper and take their head coach and just build from there. Because this podcast is not the 3 biggest fans of Coach Tourney, but I like that direction, and I like what both of you has tossed out about GM hat ideas.
Yeah, I mean, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, the whole Cooper Ryan Smith connection, it does sort of create that fascination there, and then I think. I was on early this morning for a few minutes, and I think I saw somebody send something out on a tweet like, he's on the hot seat if they don't get past this round, which, is great for any team looking for, a new identity or a coach to build around. I mean, the guy's a winner, and, so well, I wouldn't be opposed to it. I just don't see them doing anything yet with Bear. I mean, the guy hasn't really been given a shot to kind of see it through. I think this might have been that close year to kind of evaluate and see, well, how close could he get us? And obviously it's an improvement. So I kind of see them, giving him that one more chance to see what this team can do, especially if they go out and make some pretty big pickups. And then I think at that point, the expectations are going to be pretty high. So,
I do agree with that. I think this is really the first time since he's been the head coach of this franchise, even going back to Arizona, like the first time that he's actually been given tools to succeed, and he at least improved. We did take that step. So
yeah, sorry, and I know he's well liked. I was just going to say, I remember last year when he was coaching in the World Championships, I believe, that him being obviously outside the Montreal, Quebec area, like, he's pretty well. I know it didn't show in the athletic poll that came out a couple months back, but I think from a lot of like GMs, I forget what I saw it was like on RDS, which is like the Montreal Canadiens French cable broadcaster for the rights, but they were interviewing and they were talking about Tournier, and a lot of GMs had some high praise about him. So, whatever would happen, I think he would land on his feet pretty quickly. I think he's pretty well regarded. He's a tough coach, but I could see him. I don't see them making any changes here this upcoming season.
We are probably getting a little up against it in terms of time, but before we get to the rapid fire, I love asking about favorites. So, what is your favorite moment from this inaugural season?
Favorite moment? I think the first game of the season was pretty electrifying. I was down there right around the Gary Bevan press conference with Ryan Smith, and then it was a beautiful day. It just was perfect for outside people playing, the activities there outside the Delta Center, to just taking it all in. And when that first goal happened, man, and that place erupted, it was just like, this was just a surreal moment. But I think the favorite moment, and I think a lot of people have probably shared this already, is the performance Velmalka had against the Panthers. Sorry, I'm getting a little thirsty here, but again, not the Panthers, the Canes. But I think that the craziest moment, which I think gets overshadowed by his performance, was the fact that they had killed off like 12 straight penalty minutes in that third period, and Sergachev and Ian Cole were like diving around to make shot blocks. And when we killed off all those 12 minutes, I mean, that there was a lot of different unique loud pops, the Gunther first goal. But when that 12 minutes got killed off, man, that was like insane. Like, people who didn't really know hockey, who might have been there, just were like impressed by Veggie's performance, and then, the killing of those 12 minutes. And what was so funny about it, well, it wasn't funny at the time, was I think Carcone he jumped a guy who he thought hit him, which was not the guy who hit him. And so he got like a 5 and I think a game misconduct. But yeah, that was probably up there as far as the loudest like pop of a moment that I was like, man, it was crazy walking out of the Delta Center and going, man, that performance and those 12 minutes of killing off the penalty was just insane.
It was one of the few times I've ever seen somebody get a 5 for fighting without actually having another. I don't think I've ever actually witnessed it in person that it's happened. I know it's probably happened multiple times, but I had never personally seen that type of play where Gargoni gets the 5 minutes for fighting because he's just wailing on the guy. He wants nothing to do with it. But yeah, that was a very special moment. That game, I think, was a very, very highlight of this season. We'll give you a chance to give us any closing thoughts before we let you go, but are you ready for the 2-line pass rapid fire Fanley Cup Series question?
No, but let's do it.
Okay, warm up your fingers. Dustin, I'll let you start us off, introduce us.
Oh wait, I have to Google this or something?
Nope.
No, we're just gonna. It's just rapid fire, just quick, easy questions, and you just give us quick, top of the head, just first thing that comes to your mind answers. So no, just boom, quick to the point, just first thing that comes to you. So
all right, perfect.
Both of them, if they're at the top of their game, burger or pizza?
A pizza.
All things considered, BYU or the University of Utah?
Man, Utah.
Okay. Big spoon or little spoon?
Big spoon.
Is a hot dog a sandwich?
No.
On an average day, how many pigeons do you think you could reasonably carry and still produce your day?
I probably wouldn't even dare try, so I'd say 0.
Fair enough.
Go with one. Go with one pigeon.
No.
Pigeons are very docile creatures, They're very docile creatures.
You just got to get one of Mike Tyson's pigeons who are just like completely domesticated and they're just chill. Then you just hold one in each arm like you're carrying 2 footballs and just go about your day.
Yeah, no, thanks. I think I remember seeing a viral video where somebody was trying to go like feed them, and like all of a sudden they like ganged up on this lady who was trying to give them bread and stuff. So yeah, no thanks. No pigeons for me.
Fair enough.
Fantastic. Well, that was it. That was you successfully made it through the gauntlet that is the 2-line pass rapid fire.
Awesome.
And we are so appreciative of everything you do on Twitter, and we appreciate you coming in, joining us, talking with us for this hour. Is there any closing thoughts you want to leave, any shout outs you want to give or anything like that?
I mean, just I guess the entire hockey community has just been really fun to see evolve over the last year, so just a shout out to everybody who uses that hashtag or UtahHC. And I appreciate you guys doing this, trying to provide content for people to enjoy and something to get us through these dog days ahead of us where we've got no hockey for the next, 4 or 5 months. So I guess there is hockey, but you guys know what I mean. So I just appreciate what you guys are doing. So
we appreciate it. And everyone out there, go give him a follow. If you're on X, formerly known as Twitter, go give him a follow at UtahHockeyGuy. You will not regret it. He has some phenomenal posts, some phenomenal takes, and don't dare say that you're not worth the praise, because you absolutely are, and we appreciate you. We'll have you on too. We're gonna get some fans on throughout the season too for year 2, which we are considering playoffs or bust, but we'll see what the free agency does. But hey, thanks again for joining us. We appreciate it. Everyone out there, I'm Randon, and for Dustin, thanks so much for listening. You guys have a great night.